Hey guys, what's up? It is Coach Kally B, and this is the Kally B podcast, another softball podcast. And on this particular episode, I am sharing with you where I was at as far as my mental status when I was diagnosed with a blood clot in my brain that almost killed me and ended my softball career. First of all, I just want to say thank you guys for listening to this and supporting this show. One of the biggest things I'm always grateful for are the people that are a part of the big picture here at Kally B Softball. So you may be wondering, how can you do that? Just simply share this. That's all you got to do. So let's talk about mental health, especially in the athlete. First and foremost, please know if you do struggle with any mental health issues, I really want you to seek care. Tell your coach. If you don't feel comfortable telling your coach, make sure you tell your parents, tell a teacher, tell your friends. Back when I was playing, it wasn't necessarily not important, but it wasn't as chaotic as it is now. And I truly believe it's because we are forcing athletes that are not ready to play at a higher level to play at a higher level because they're not developing physically, therefore they are not developed mentally, let alone emotionally. But we as a society are putting all these great demands and pressures on them when they are not developed yet on how to handle them. So yes, there is a hole in the bucket of youth sports. That is a whole nother topic. Now let's talk about the blood clot that almost killed me. All right, some of you have heard the story, and some of you, this is the first time you've ever heard it. I know for my husband, he says, you've already talked about it, but there are a bazillion people, I don't know the exact number, on the planet, and I'm willing to bet probably 9 out of 10 of you that watch this is going to be the first time of you hearing my story. In between my sophomore and junior year of college softball, I was transferring from Seward County Community College to Eastern New Mexico in Portales. So I was going from JUCO ball to Division II ball. When I went there to try out for the team, I just fell in love with the culture, the team. As far as the husband and wife coaching staff that was there, it was awesome. And I wanted to be a part of that. Regardless of what I wanted, though, God had a different plan. Now, if you don't know this, I am a believer in Christ. I am faith based and I'm not perfect, but I do try to live according to the word of the Bible. So I do believe that we are not promised rainbows and butterflies, and it's not supposed to be perfect and happy go lucky all the time. We are going to experience hardships for his purpose in our life. Luckily for me, when I was 18, I started coaching my senior year of high school. I decided to give back after our coach in high school prompted us to give back to the local community. So I started giving back with Little League, and there was my first client. I'll never forget her dad handing me a $20 bill and asking me to coach his daughter. She was my first client, and she went on to play 4 years of college softball, and she was successful. She was a player of the week in her divisions and her regions, and she finished strong at Northwestern University in Iowa. So she had a very successful journey in softball, and it paid for her school. So that was even more of a plus. But little did I know that the dream I had to play forever, because there was minor league ball, I knew the Olympics were real. Like, I literally watched the Olympic team with Lisa Fernandez, Michelle Smith, Dot Richardson. I watched them when I was, I believe, around 14 years of age at the College World Series Stadium, play against Oklahoma Baptist University, and I got to meet them. And that for me was surreal. That for me was like, I could do this the rest of my life. So my plan was to become a teacher so I could have summers off and play ball and eventually try out for Team USA and maybe go professional. And it's just crazy to see what's happening right now with the AUSL. Just so excited about that. I actually got to go watch the Talons and the Volts play at the new OU Stadium this summer. It was amazing. Such an experience. Just to see it in fruition, right? But again, back to God's plan. So there I was, getting ready to go into the next chapter, and I was doing it with a headache, a non-stop headache. I'm not talking like Oh, I have a headache every now and then. I'm talking so bad that my mom thought that I had brain cancer. Um, Usually, when people have malignant brain cancer, it changes their personality. And every time my mom would call me or she talked to me, I was very disturbed. I was very angry because she would usually wake me up. The only time I would find any peace was when I was sleeping. So my mom, she did a CAT scan because she was a CAT scan tech at that time. She also did MRIs. She didn't necessarily see anything, but there was an impedance in the scan. And when she brought it to the radiologist's attention, he was like, I'm the radiologist, you're the tech. And my mom's like, I'm the tech, that's my daughter. He said, there's nothing there. We had already ruled out meningitis, everything, all of the above. So there I am again in 10 over 10 pain. And finally, one night, I started throwing up profusively. It started on my short little shift as a hostess at Denny's, and I got home, and within 10 minutes, I had thrown up 7 times. At this point, I think it was by the third time, I couldn't even stand up. I had to crawl to the phone, and I had to call my mom and tell her what was going on. And she said, get your roommates to take you to the ER now. Well, the ER didn't do much, didn't do a scan. Lo and behold, that became a whole nother venture that my parents had to take on themselves legally because the neurologist who discovered the blood clot in my brain said if my mom wouldn't have pushed the way she did, she would have been planning my funeral that following weekend. So I go home from the ER. I sleep 16 hours. I wake up. I go to brush my hair and I have no peripheral vision. Freaking out. My mom just would not take no for an answer. Ended up getting me in with a neurologist within a 24-hour window. It was the hardest trip of my life. I had to ride in the back of her Bravada, her Oldsmobile Bravada, laying on my back with my legs up. It was the only way I could not dry heave. Every time I would stand up, I would start dry heaving. I would want to puke. It was terrible. When we got to the neuro center, they did a spinal tap. My pressure in my spine was 29. It is not supposed to be over 24. I'll never forget that pain, the needle entering my back, but I also will never forget the relief that I felt when they took the fluid out. It was like the elephant had got off of my head. When the nurse brought me up, I was shocked. I was like, it's gone. She's like, what's gone? I'm like, the pain in my head. At that time, the neurologist knew there had to have been a pseudocyst sitting on my brainstem. My white cells weren't elevated, so they weren't concerned that it was cancer. When they did the regular MRI, nothing showed up. Back then, when they would do the MRV, they would inject ink into the venous system and then they would cut certain images and boom, they were able to see it. There it was. A blood clot in my brain, my left sagittal sinus, somewhere in this area, 98% blocked, occluded. Okay. So there were several theories. I had been born with this and it took 20 years for this thing to get as big as it did, or the clotting disorder that they later discovered because of the clot caused this. So it was the craziest thing. I'll never forget the MRI, looking at the clot and seeing all the collaterals, the little rivers around the clot just to keep me alive. My brain was trying to keep me alive. Your brain's number one job is to protect you and keep you alive. That's why you always pitter out before your body pitters out, because your brain's like, oh, this is hard. Take it easy. No, no. Well, needless to say, I didn't really understand in the moment what was going on and how severe my case was. They put me into ICU head trauma because neuro centers like Barrows down here in Phoenix wouldn't even touch me. They said if we do surgery on her, she's 20, and we lose a piece of that clot, she will have paralysis in the right side of her body and her quality of life will be diminished forever. We're not touching her. So they were left with a gamble. They started pumping me full of blood thinners. They were either going to get the clot to dissolve or they were going to bleed me out. One or the other, right? Those 7 days, I think it was 7. My mom can probably remember better, but those 7 days in the hospital, I set off the alarms several times because I was an athlete. So my resting heart rate would drop down to like 37, 35, 32. Finally, like the third time, they came in with the crash table thinking I was dying. But lucky for me, I had a cool nurse who was like, guys, read the chart. Let's go. She's an athlete. Um, from there, I went into an ICU head trauma ward where it was this big room. There were all these bed mates like in a circle. I was the only one that could talk. Everyone was in a coma. People had been beat to a pulp. People were hit by trains. And I would talk to the nurses and just, had a good time. Again, not understanding what was going on. Then from there, I got my own room. And I think I was in the hospital a total of 14 days. And that was my like step down unit basically. I was being monitored for, normal, getting my INR, everything tested out constantly every day. And I was discharged. Not really understanding, right? So the mental capacity of what was happening hadn't really hit me. And I remember being home and my mom had already enrolled me in an ultrasound program, like didn't even have me hit the ground, like mentally and emotionally. And I went to the gym. And I just remember being in that gym and I started working out. And this is where it hit me. Why are you doing this? You can't even play softball anymore. Why was I working out? During that time when I was in the hospital, my mom had reached out to the NCAA. And because of my diagnosis that they found in the hospital, I have a protein S and a protein C deficiency. I got one strand from each parent, which per the hemodoc, it was the genetic lottery. It was like the worst one to have. It is the worst one to have. NCAA said, you're a liability, you're done. So there I am in a gym working out. Why? Why am I working out? Well, one, it was habit, right? And I started to get mad, like angry. And that's when I remember I started having the conversations with God, like, why didn't you just give me a tumor? And they could just go in and take it out. But instead, you took away the one thing that I have been good at throughout all my life, throughout growing up in an abusive home, my dad and his heavy hand, throughout my parents' divorce, which was more of a blessing than anything, throughout multiple other traumas, another day, another story. Softball was the one thing that I could do. I had learned how to compartmentalize. The moment I stepped over that chalk line, nothing could touch me, not even my real father. Right? So I start lifting with this sense of anger, just mad at God. And God has a funny way of reminding you who's in control, right? So I go to get on the calf machine, and it's the old school kind that you have to get under and you have to lift up, right? And I go to move the pin, and the dude before me did not reset it, and I was just in this cloud of anger that I just didn't pay attention. And I had 175 pounds slammed down on my head. 2 days out of the hospital. Newly on blood thinners. I still have a scar on my head. You talk about your ego being crushed. So I go to the restroom and I'm literally talking to God. And I remember conversating in the mirror and just more or less embarrassed because here I was, this collegiate athlete, and I just, had something so stupid just happen to me. Like, I think there may have been two people, myself, that guy, and another person in the gym. And I basically, tightened my ponytail, pulled my big girl chonies up, so to speak. And I went to turn and walk out of the bathroom and I itched my neck and I was like, oh, it's sticky. And then I look and then I start to see blood right away. This is welcome to your new life. You now are on blood thinners. You now have a sense of urgency. Every time you get hit, every time you get cut, you have to notify people, all the jazz, right? So I'm like, all right, you got this. So I run to the front desk and I'm like, hey, I just want to let you guys know that the calf machine fell on my head and I have a laceration now. And they're like, oh, great. That's like the third time this has happened in 2 weeks. It's the same guy. You know, I wasn't the only victim, so to speak. So I called my mom when I got back to my apartment and I said, I'm not coming in. You can't make me. Nope. I just had 175 pounds, same on my head. I am trying to process not being able to play softball ever again. I can't rodeo again. Like I may as well just walk around with toilet paper wrapped around me or bubble wrap. My mom was like, absolutely not. Take a shower, wash your hair. I'll meet you in the ER. You're going to get staples and you're going to ultrasound. Whatever. Fine. I did. I had 3 staples, boom, 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 put in my head. Back then, in the ultrasound program I was in, I was able to get right into clinicals, grandfathered in. I mean, you talk about hands-on experience. It was some of the best experience of my life. Sorry, my nose is itchy. Oh. So I never really hit the ground, right? My mom had a big part of that. She never let me like have a pity party, so to speak. I was mad. But then I mean I would still go on and I would play res ball. I remember I pitched for a men's team. What was I doing? What was I thinking? Absolutely dumb. Just dumb. So I think the biggest thing for me and my mental status was I was angry because I had put so much into softball. I wasn't necessarily scared because I remember asking myself, are you scared that you don't know what you're going to do? And I could hear the voice inside of me or whatever say, no, you figure things out. This is what you do. You're really good at it, you know? So I think the darkest part though of being told you're never going to play softball again, say goodbye to college softball, was that moment where I was angry at God. Like you literally gave me something that A, I'm still alive, but B, I still can't play softball. Fast forward almost 30 years later, 25 years to be exact, I've been on blood thinners and I've been coaching for 27. Actually, longer than that. Yes, 1 year longer. Wow. Sorry. My math is mathing quickly right now and I can't keep up, but I go back to when I started coaching and then I started to look at how I've always been coaching. Wherever I moved for contracting for ultrasound, I ended up being a pitching coach. I ended up helping out with little leagues. I ended up helping out with local travel teams. Heck, when I was in college, I still had 1 more year of eligibility to play on an 18U team. So I played and I was the pitching coach. I had a blast. So 17 years of doing ultrasound. Great career. I highly recommend it. Just make sure you learn techniques on how to restore your body. Ultrasound is hard on your body and it's getting harder because people are getting larger and ultrasound has to have a level of pressure, the right, how would you say, physics to go through the tissue. It does require you to have proper pressure and it is hard on your arm from your hand all the way to your shoulder, to your scaps, to your lats. It's tough. So if you are in an ultrasound program, make sure that they are incorporating, self-care, stretching. Heck, they better have a massage, like a masseuse there to help you guys Government hospitals usually do bring in massages, so you might do your first stint at a government hospital. I'm just saying. Or you can get into a private practice and maybe they have ties with a masseuse there. But it is a good career. But instead of just doing that, I started to take a toll on my arm. I did, and it started to impact what I was doing as a pitching coach and as a softball coach, and I did not like that. And so when we moved down to Phoenix, Arizona, my husband said, "You may as well just go full time. It's something you've been doing since you were 18. You're good at it. You've gotten girls to play college ball. You've created amazing relationships with kids and their families." And I was like, all right, so this is what I'm going to do. So there you go. Kally V softball origin story right there. No, I'm just teasing. But this necessarily is based around the mental status of me during that time. And again, it was just more of pure anger. I was mad at God because he was taking away the one thing I was good at. But now looking back, he was taking away the selfish part of me and reinforcing the selfless part in me, and that is coaching. So that's why it's really tough for me to, hold back on coaching. I want to give so much to kids. I want them to see what I see in them, almost like a parent sees in their kid. I think the coaching curse is similar to a parent curse. You always see the best in your kids and you want the best and you don't want your kids to be harmed. But truth is, we all have to walk a road of adversity in order to reach our success. And if we don't learn how to lose, we'll never know how to win. So there you go. In honor of, I don't even have my phone, but I believe it is National Thrombosis Day. I just thought it would just be legit to share that story. I know you may have questions. Like I do get a lot of questions. If it's genetic, or do your kids have it? During my second pregnancy, I did get a lot of genetic testing, and it's really weird because he was my smallest baby. They Dopplered the cord a lot when I was pregnant with him. But they said nothing in me said that it was going to be passed down to my kids. So I think that's good. My hemo doc at that time did say once my kids turn 20, if they would like to get a DNA test, not a DNA test, a genetic test, well, maybe a DNA test too. I have no idea. If they want to, they can. But she also told me, think about if you would have known that you had a genetic clotting disorder when you were 5, would you have lived the rich, lavish life? And when I say rich, I mean jumping off of bales of hay. I mean riding steers. I mean roping. I mean running through the pasture, falling. Like, would you have lived that rich, lavish life that you lived if you would have known about this? And I said, no. I said, I probably would have been, next to the boy in the bubble, which is something that I see a lot of people that get diagnosed with clotting disorders or a clot. They get put on blood thinners, they just stop living their life. Here in the last 5 years, living in a bigger city, the 5th largest in the nation, when I go to my doctor's appointments, people, the nurses, the doctors, they just read my chart over and over again because they can't believe I'm on blood thinners. I don't have high blood pressure. I'm not diabetic. They're just like, this doesn't make sense. And so finally, last year, I asked the nurse, I was like, why are you so surprised? And she said, because people stop living. She goes, you look fit. You look like you work out. You move like you move. She's just like, it's crazy to me that you're on blood thinners. And people don't eat green leafy foods. That's another thing. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a doctor, but the advice I took from my hematologist at that time from the Cancer Center in New Mexico was if you are going to eat a salad, you eat it every single day. If you are going to eat spinach, you eat it every single day. It's when you deviate off of the every single day that will elevate or decelerate your iron levels. You'll either get, for me, if I eat too much green leafy foods, my blood gets really thick because of vitamin K. If I eat green leafy foods on Monday and don't eat them until Thursday, my INR gets really thin. So I have to eat spinach every day in my egg white omelet. There for a while, it was spinach in my shake every day. I found a way. But I can't even make this stuff up. If I deviated from that 2 days, my blood would get so thin because of the level of warfarin that I'm on. So, again, if you've recently been diagnosed with a blood clot, talk to your doctor about nutrients, supplements, what you can do so you don't cut out what your body needs. I mean, it's such a game of chess, you know? Like you take this, but it's going to cause this, and then you got to take this so it doesn't cause this. I mean, it's just crazy. And as I'm getting older, it's just getting harder. So 25 years being on warfarin, there's not a lot of people like myself out there. So if by chance you watch this and you've been on blood thinners for as long as me, I would love to hear from you. Um, it's just interesting to hear other people's, survival tactics of how they've gotten through on these things. Oh, one more thing. Uh, so one of the ways that I do manage my INR levels instead of going to the lab, because that became a pain in the butt so quickly. And keep in mind, I've been having to do this for 25 years, is I do use the COAG check. This is the at-home monitoring system. And if you follow me on social media, Coach Kally V or the Kally V, you'll see me. I do my monthly draws and I film them for you guys. But it's literally like a diabetic system. That's all it is. It's just like a little diabetic system. It has a little needle, pricker, poker, gun. I don't know what to say. But your insurance covers this. So call your insurance and see. I mean, if your insurance will. But other than that, this has definitely made my life a lot easier as a business owner, a mom, a wife, you know, is being able to have this on hand to check it if I ever feel like it's off, or, I can't get to the lab, I can do this. So, but yeah, mental status. The worst part was the initial, um, and I think, just moving through it as I'm just reminiscing, I know I was sad about it, but I think I was more mad. I think I was mad that I didn't get a say in it. I think, as we all are, when something doesn't go our way. But it's just funny because God took that selfish piece of me and he decreased it, and he increased the selfless piece of me and took something that I just did giving back. And literally, it's my career full time as an elite international fast pitch pitching coach, Kally V softball. That's what I do full time. And I love it. So there you go. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I really don't feel like any question is a dumb question. And be sure to follow me on social media, Instagram, Coach Kally V, as well as TikTok, as well as Facebook. And yeah, and be sure to like and subscribe to this and follow the podcast, the Kally V podcast. And thanks for listening. And I hope you guys have a blessed day. Bye.